Hello and welcome, everyone. With that, I'm going to call this meeting of the Monroe County Council to order for Tuesday, February 14th. And I'd like to note for the record that we have several empty seats up here. So Councilor Crossley, Councilor Deckard, and Councilor Munson and myself are here in person. Councilor McKim is joining us via Zoom, and Councilor Iverson is enjoying an anniversary celebration, will not be joining us tonight. And we do not have Councilor Hawk with us yet. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance now.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next item is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone wish to add or remove an item from tonight's agenda? Well, I do. We discovered this afternoon that an additional appropriation that we had advertised for tonight's meeting did not make it onto the agenda. So in order to not have to re-advertise, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we add to tonight's agenda item 16C. And that will be discussion and approval of Fund 8950-0000, ARPA appropriations.
Second.
Okay, well, I'm also going to ask if we can simultaneously then table the additional appropriation request, which is a lot. It's 100, whoa. Because, yes, it's $105,455,928 to the Tuesday, February 28th council work session.
Second.
And the reason for that is I advertised the entire amount across all categories so that you would have flexibility when you do make your appropriation requests.
So this would be following up on our last meeting's discussion of ARPA projects, and we just did not pull that together in terms of getting specific dollar amounts. Is there any discussion on the amendment and the tabling? Okay, we will go ahead and do a roll call vote. Thanks.
Yes. Councilor McKim,
Yes.
Councilor Deckard,
Yes.
Councilor Crossley,
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz,
Yes.
Councilor Munson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Do we have any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment for items not on the agenda. And we typically have a limit of 3 minutes per speaker. If that cramps your style, let me know. And anyone who is here in the room, go ahead and come on up to the podium. If you want to make a comment on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand and we will call on you.
I ask that you please sign in and state your name for the record.
Your mic.
It's not ever clear.
Test, test.
Yeah, now it's green.
There you go.
Okay. Well, my name is Carol Wilson. I'm a Monroe County resident. Like all of you and many others in the county, I've been following the proceedings of the Community Justice Response Committee. While I realize the county commissioners are ultimately responsible for any decision reached for the future, what I want to talk to you about tonight is the here and now, okay? part of my comment at the CJRC February 6th meeting was quoted in the Herald Times, and it's exactly what I feel. Ensuring humane conditions should be the baseline for any further action. I wish, as you do, that we had a magic wand to transform our current facility. But since we don't have that, I hope you'll support the efforts of Sheriff Marte and his department to significantly improve the conditions in our jail. You've seen the presentation that they've made at a couple past meetings. I've even looked at it again. Some of you have even seen it in firsthand, okay? Progress is being made there, and I trust will continue under your stewardship. When I was thinking about exactly what I wanted to say tonight, an aphorism appeared on my Facebook feed. What you allow is what will continue. Facebook is usually not the source of great wisdom, but in this case I do agree, and I urge you not to allow these deplorable conditions to continue to exist any way you can, okay? Thank you, and thank you for the candy.
You're welcome.
Okay, I better sign.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Emily Nias, and I'm just here to introduce myself. I believe I am the newest observer for the League of Women Voters, and so I'm looking forward to attending my first county council meeting. And I've been told that I should attend quietly and take notes and not participate, so I'll do my best. It's not really in my nature, but I'm going to be working very hard at it out here.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I agree with everything Carol said.
We have one person on Zoom.
Go ahead.
My name is Audrey Williams, and I am a resident of Monroe County. I'm here to speak tonight also about the new jail that the county seems to be doggedly pursuing. At this moment, I really don't want to address the needs of a new jail versus renovating the current jail, because I feel like that is a huge conversation that needs to happen, and we don't have time for that tonight in my 3 minutes. However, there is a current population in the jail that needs to be served, as well as a whole bunch of county residents who are being marginalized and shunted into the jail basically every day. I admit I am new to this conversation, but it seems that the county is not really focused on instituting policies or programs to improve recidivism rates or reduce the number of individuals who are processed through the jailhouse. I'd like to address the apparent lack of resources that the county is willing to spend for some of the most vulnerable citizens of our county, the homeless and those with mental health conditions. Not only has the county declined to provide resources for these individuals, but the county has almost criminalized the existence of these individuals. The county has spent well over $100,000 kicking out homeless and removing the camps that they have set up, trying to find somewhere to live. And then not provided housing or shelter to put these people anywhere. And not only that, you seem to be willing to leave that mostly up to nonprofits and religious organizations to try and provide for these displaced individuals. I feel it's shameful that our government is relying on donations for concerned citizens while then actively spending money to create more problems for those same citizens to try and deal with. It's unclear if the county has ever tried to leverage existing programs in the state to provide additional funding, such as the Indiana Housing First program from the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. But I find it very disturbing that the county would rather arrest an individual than provide them shelter, meal, or rent until they can get on their feet. Rent in this area is getting ridiculous. I moved here 4.5 years ago, and the cost of my unit has increased $400 since then. I am lucky enough to own a home, but many are being forced to make the choice of becoming homeless or just being forced to not being able to exist anywhere. A lack of affordable housing is only going to make this problem worse, and even at some point, a fancy new jail isn't even going to be able to house all these people who are being created and marginalized by this system. I would ask the county council to start taking actionable steps to help these vulnerable citizens they represent instead of criminalizing them and locking them away where they no longer have to be seen. Hiding these people within the jail does not make them go away, and as Sheriff Marte has shown us, it likely is making the problems for these individuals much worse. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have one person on Zoom, if she could be allowed to speak.
Hi, my name is Renee Miller. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. First, let me congratulate Councilor Crossley on her Woman of the Year award that the city gave her. And thank you for your time this evening allowing me to speak. I'm not a very good public speaker, so bear with me. I just want to say I don't have any confidence in anybody in the county as elected officials at this point, including you. Nobody listened to the inmates, remembering that many have not even been found guilty of anything, but nobody listened. And they have been talking and talking and telling these stories for a very long time, but nobody listened to those voices. So going forward, I ask that you see each and every communication of the inmates and do not assume just because they are in jail that they are lying. You as a governmental body gave the money that caused the very harm that we are seeing today. What do you want us to do as community members to start implementation of programs so we as a community can bring proposals to you? I'd like an answer to that, please. And let's not let this full calendar year pass without starting real programs that the Sheriff's Department does not hold the power over. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wanting to make comment? Okay. Seeing no one here or online, then let's go ahead and move to department updates. I believe we have at least one update from the Commissioner's office.
I'm sorry I don't have one to share virtually with Councilor McKim, but we are looking at logos to put on for the ARPA funding that we're providing, and these were some mock-ups that we have had done to consider. We haven't made a final decision. We'd like some feedback before we do that. My preference personally would be to use number 2, but with the sun filled in. I just like that design better, but just wanted to give you an update on the kinds of things that we're thinking about. You know, if we buy buses, for example, for rural transit, it would be nice to have these kinds of logos put on to the side. They would just be small things, but to acknowledge the fact that the American Rescue Plan Act money made a difference in our community. So I thank you. If you have questions, let me know.
When do you expect to make a determination?
How quickly do you want it? We haven't taken a formal vote at this point, but we didn't want to keep you in the dark about what we were considering, what we were looking at.
I feel like I'm looking at one of those puzzles where you have to compare the pictures and pick the difference.
Right. No, we're envisioning like the two, where it says option 2, that would be sort of a rectangle. So it would show Monroe County and then the ARPA funding thing. So it would be 2 circles side by side.
Very cool, thank you.
Okay.
That was my same thought. Like, which is the odd one out
Right.
here?
Are there any other departments that would like to make an update? Or did you have any more? I'm sorry. No, okay. I do not see anyone online either. All right, then we will move to council liaison updates. Are there any counselors who would like to speak? Counselor Crossley.
Thank you, President Wiltz. So a couple of things that I just wanted to point out since our last meeting. I am also a part of the Community Justice Response Committee, as you are, and Councilor Iverson, but I also am the liaison for the jail and the Sheriff's Department. And so I know earlier in January, we've heard public comment reference it. The conditions that we have seen were rather disheartening and horrific and all of the above. And we can go into all those details, but what I would like to say is I've been able to, Sheriff Marte and his administration definitely have been keeping us abreast of what is going on. And I know transparency is the biggest thing that he continues to talk about, and it is something that is very near and dear to me as well. So as my job as the liaison is to present to council as well as public to let everybody know. I got a chance to, in one of our meetings that happened a couple of weeks ago, Sheriff Marte and Commander Gibbons walked me around the facility, and it has been completely night and day of what we have seen in terms of cleanliness and habitable living conditions and working conditions, because we also have correctional officers that are working there that are having to deal with a lot of the things that we have seen. So is it something that's perfect? Absolutely not. Is it something that is improved and what we have seen? Yes, it is a work in progress. And he thanks the community for being around him, as well as us as liaisons as well. And so I just want to say that they are definitely trying. And he's only been in for 45 days now. So the work that he's trying to do and has done so far is actually something that I can commend. And he needs our support on the council. He also needs to continue to have the support from other county colleagues, but also the support of the community. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Munson.
Yes, I joined Councilor Crossley in meeting at the jail with Sheriff Marte and the jail staff. And indeed, it was a very good opportunity to see how they've immediately taken steps to improve the conditions there. It is a work in progress. And that progress rests in part on the county council, because we have to make sure that there is funding available somehow to move forward with the repairs and maintenance that needs to be done. We said we would do it, and we will do it. And we're looking very carefully at what options we have available for carrying this out, because the schedule for doing this is yesterday. We're moving forward, and I would like to recognize Sheriff Marte and the staff for the work that they've done, and we welcome them here at the council to give us an update anytime that they wish at our council meetings. Secondly, I took on the role of liaison with the Plan Commission, or actually it's not a liaison role, it's a member role of the Plan Commission. And Councilor McKim and I traded jobs, so to speak. He is now the council member on the board of the Solid Waste Management District. And we'll just see who got the best deal here. I'm not sure I'm not sure it's me. Because there are more meetings involved than I knew that there would be. But I look forward to learning more about the Plan Commission's work. And it's welcome for me to be back there, because before I served on the county council, that began in 2013, I served 7 years on the Plan Commission's Plan Review Committee. And this is the committee that looks at every proposed development and zoning change that is to be brought forward. And it's an opportunity to help projects succeed and to point out red flags if there are red flags. It's one of the best committees in all of county government. So I look forward to working in greater detail with the Plan Commission, because the development ordinance is on the schedule for approval this year. And that is a very big step for our county and for the residents. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Hawk?
Just for the record, the Personnel Administrative Committee met in this past week to meet with the Sheriff's Department regarding a position that they requested to have filled to assist them with the problems that's been happening at the jail, trying to make sure that they have better eyes and control of the cleanliness of the jail. And so the Personnel Committee agreed to this and required to have this information sent on to WIS within 7 days. So that 7 days is now about past. So hopefully that has happened. So that, and of course I've been in touch with the sheriff and the jail commander as well as the chief deputy with regarding a lot of different issues as well. Part of what liaison that I have is the assessor's office. And so to that regard, assessor's office employee and the assessor herself was already at the conference. And so we spent the day at the conference going through all kinds of very important documents having to do with what could happen here with county, with what's going on at the state. One of the very important legislation is Senate Bill 4, and of course that still hasn't passed the House. But so because of that, and it has to do with our health departments, I watched the health department meeting then, which was held, I think, on either Thursday or Friday. I watched it over the weekend. And it appeared to me that they were not as abreast of that legislation as they would like to be. And so I do believe that they're going to try to get caught up and get the information. So, because what I'd like to hear from them is, what do they think of Senate Bill 4? And is it something they support? Because the county council would have to also support it, because it would require our health department to do additional duties in order to receive the additional money. So we'll have to look at that to see what happens. Tomorrow I'm also the liaison with the airport, and I'll be meeting with the airport director and many members of his board, and we'll be going to the BEDC meeting, but have an opportunity to meet with him in advance. So it's a busy time. I do serve on the Indiana Association of County Council Legislative Committee. We met again on Friday. We met on Wednesday. We try to meet every other Friday. Sometimes it's every Friday, depending on how quick the legislation is moving forward. So everybody stay tuned, because what's going to happen is you're going to get that great big tax bill, and it's expected to be a great deal higher because your assessed value is a great deal higher, and the total rate did not come down as far as the assessed values had grown. So we'll see how many get astonished by that. I know the state's trying to do some things that would help us work through it, but that's not something that can happen for this year. It would have to be for next year. So please don't throw rotten eggs when you get it, but I'll duck if you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? All right. Then we will move now to our first unique agenda item of the evening.
Council, pardon me. Excuse me. Council, I move to approve the appointment of Maria Douglas to the Women's Commission for a term of 2 years, which expires on January 1st, 2025.
Second.
Second.
Great, and this has been a little bit of a shuffle because we had Maria on this commission prior, but the membership configuration was changed by the commissioners, and now it's been changed again, so we're happy to reappoint her, and very appreciative that she's willing to serve. Are there any questions on this appointment from council? Councilor McKim.
Yes, not a question, but a comment. This past Saturday, I attended the work session of the Monroe County Women's Commission as the county council ex officio appointment, and I am really excited to get to work with such an energetic and dynamic group of commission members. And I want to remind everybody here of the mission of the commission, which is to serve in an advisory role to assist residents, businesses, and the government of Monroe County in addressing issues of gender inequity in all aspects of society, including government, the economy, education, employment, social and family development, healthcare, the justice system, the arts, as well as land use and planning. Very expansive mission, but also extremely important. And we have a newly reconstituted board, as President Wiltz just mentioned, who's very eager to address that mission through policy analysis, advocacy, and relationship building, as well as on programs that we have already funded, for example, like Girls Coding Camp. And I think you'll be hearing more from the commission in future county council meetings. I'm extremely happy to support the appointment of Maria Douglas to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Pass.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0-1.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 8.
Council, I move to approve the prosecutor's request for additional appropriations in Fund 9159-0000 High-Tech Crime Unit Grant of $179,031.84 in the services category.
Second.
And I believe we have our prosecutor here to talk with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. As you may recall, we received a grant from the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council to start a regional high-tech crime unit in partnership with Indiana University Police Department. I am happy to report that it is going strong, and this is just a request to appropriate our second year of funding under that contract. The funding is in the total amount of $285,000. However, IPAC did some negotiations of some group purchases to try to make each unit pay a little bit less for some of our equipment that we needed. So we ended up receiving a balance of $179,031.84. And we did provide a letter sort of documenting what was purchased with the other funds. I just wanted to briefly report some of the progress. On February 2nd, I received an update from my director at the High Tech Crime Unit. We do serve 10 counties. At that time, 14 cases had been submitted. 19 of those were, 19 mobile devices were submitted, and 3 SIM cards without devices were submitted. The types of crimes in which the evidence was processed for were 4 attempted homicides, 4 narcotics cases, 3 child exploitation cases, 1 homicide, 1 vehicle theft, and 1 sexual assault. So right now our turnaround time is about 4 days. You might recall that one of the reasons they did these grants in the first place is that it was taking the state police lab sometimes as many as 5, 6, 7 months to turn this evidence around. So this has been a really great resource for our community. We are hoping that the Indiana General Assembly will give us a little bit more funding in the coming years. But I will also say that our partner at Indiana University has put in hundreds of thousands of dollars towards this project. So it's really been a good partnership. So thank you. Any questions?
Thanks. Questions, comments from council? Oh, this sounds like a really great thing for our community. And you said this is the second year. Is it funded annually then? And so each year we hope for the next kind of?
Yeah, we had a 2-year contract,
Oh,
and it
okay.
was for $285,000 each year.
Okay, great. Fingers crossed that it continues.
Yes, I'm hoping that we will continue this. I know that the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council is using some of our success stories to
Right.
lobby for additional funding, and I do think we have some support in the Indiana General Assembly for that.
Great, good news. Thank you. Is there any public comment? I do not see any. So then we will have a roll call vote on the appropriation.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you. Now we are at number 9 on our agenda.
Council, I move to approve the probation department's request for additional appropriations in Fund 8160-9623 Justice Partners SIM Grant of $2,550 in the supplies category and $57,450 in the services category for a total appropriation of $60,000.
Second.
Thank you. And we have someone here to talk with us about this. Great.
Hi.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. My name is Anthony Williams, the Court Alcohol and Drug Director for the Probation Department. I was told it would better explain myself to say I'm the new Susan Allen, for those that know Susan Allen.
Welcome.
Thank you. I come today just for the appropriations for the continuation of our Justice Partners grant that's been ongoing from the state from 2002. The target population are offenders that are currently incarcerated in the Monroe County Jail coming back out into community supervision. We have an MOU with Centerstone, which provides a reentry recovery coach that will go into the jail to work with those individuals prior to getting out and placed back onto community supervision to kind of help adjust them in that transition from the jail back into the community. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Are there questions from council? Yes.
I would love to see, and you may not have it on you today, I'd love to see some data about people served, visits by the counselors to the jail, et cetera. That'd be interesting for my eyes.
Yeah, what I will say is that we're kind of in a reboot. If you think about the funding began in 2020 and the hurdles that we experienced with COVID. In addition, we went unstaffed with a reentry recovery coach for quite a while. We have somebody back on staff with that. There are discussions going on with the jail and Centerstone at this point and making sure that we're revitalizing, getting back in the jail and working on this. And so hopefully we'll be able to kind of give you data on a reboot as to where we go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, and if you can let us know anything impeding that from happening the way it needs to happen, that would be helpful too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In, getting in the jail, in the community, period. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Counselor Hawk?
Yes, could you explain what in particular this means? Because it's saying, to begin with, that it is for offenders being released onto community supervision from our jail. But then it says, however, I don't like that however part.
Yeah.
And it says, as resources allow, the project could expand to serve offenders being released from the Indiana Department of Correction to the supervision of the Monroe Circuit Court Probation Department. So my question is, do they release people from the DOC here to Monroe County just because we have the services? Or, I mean, what, I don't, help me understand what that means.
I think it's just looking at individuals that already resided in Monroe County prior to going to the DOC that are coming back into the community, just to make sure that those individuals are kind of reintegrating to the society as well.
Okay, because I know that there's legislation being proposed now, I think it's in the House, that would require that any inmate that's released from DOC would not have transportation to go back to any place other than their county of residence when they were tried or assigned, whatever the term might be. So because there's been so many people say, look, the folks that we're having to deal with here, they aren't Monroe County folks, they're the term's being used, criminal transients. Well, they're still human beings, but I would like for them to transit themselves right back to their home county because we have our hands full trying to do the best that we can with what we have to work with. So this is not to reach out and take in more.
No,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Are there other questions or comments from council? Yeah, I just want to echo Councilor Deckard's comments and very much want to support programs like this. And obviously this is grant money and very, kudos on that. But with everything that we're finding out about the jail and with a lot of the efforts that are going on around criminal justice reform right now, this is exactly the type of program that we can learn from as we take the next steps to kind of expanding these services for reentry. So just want to say thank you, and I hope to hear from you about how it's going. I see that Linda Brady has her hand raised.
Good.
Could we give her access to microphone?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. Anthony's absolutely right to answer Marty's question that we didn't open this up to just anybody from the Department of Correction, but when we wrote the original MOU, we wanted to leave it open that if someone who was already in our community who lived here and was on parole and not probation and they needed reentry services, and if we had the resources, and that's why we said if we had the resources, that we could allow someone on parole to have some access to real resources if we had those available. So that's why we added that in the MOU.
Makes sense.
We didn't want to just leave somebody out who was on parole, who also lived here, if they needed the services. So that's why we added those extra words in the MOU.
Thank you. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Yes?
Yes, that continues to be a concern of mine. I do watch the jail bookings every day, and from time to time you see that they are here on parole. And so it would be nice if we knew if they were really from Monroe County or they were sent here on parole because that's where the state knows. It's no secret. Everybody says Now, does everybody write? I don't know, but the story goes that they're dropping them off. I heard our auditor even say that at one of the public meetings, that they're dropping them off in front of our jail. I mean, I think she was being facetious about it, but that's really the belief of the public. And so I don't think any of us want to do anything to bring more problems to Monroe County, or at least I certainly don't. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor McKim.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. And now we're at item number 10 from our Courts Department.
Sorry about the frog. Council, I move to approve the court's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 4018-0000 Court Interpreter Grant of $10,000 in the services category.
Second.
Second.
And hi, Ms.
Hi
Abraham.
there, how are you? I'm here tonight. The court once again received a court interpreter grant. It was higher this year than what we've had last couple of years. They've given us $10,000. This helps us to offset the cost in County General to pay for our interpreters. We usually use certified interpreters, and that's what this grant will cover. I'm asking you, it is a reimbursable grant, so I turn in the vouchers and they reimburse me with the money. So I'm just asking you to appropriate that for us.
Great. Do we have questions or comments? Yes.
I think I've heard you say in the past that you were using every bit of this and sometimes need more. Is that correct?
That's correct. Last year, I think we only had about 7,200, I think maybe last year, and I had spent all that, and then I have to go to County General out of my special services, and I think we're probably 5,000 to 6,000 after that for, out of the County General. So, and every year I have to turn in a voucher every quarter so I can keep track of it, and so I think that helped. They saw that we spent more, so they upped it then to 10,000 this year. So, fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Indeed. I see Judge Stafford lurking behind
I'm not saying
you.
anything about this one. I'm coming in on the next.
She's the next one.
Okay, okay. Didn't want to.
Supporting our staff.
Okay.
Working.
Didn't want to skip you if you had something
Trust
to
me,
add.
it's all good.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Great, and now we're at items B and C.
Yes. Council, I'll be combining items 10A and B into one single motion. I move to approve the court's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 91130000 Family Court Grant of $12,000 in the services category, and to simultaneously approve a category transfer of $624.01 from the supplies category to the services category.
Second.
Okay, this one is our family court grant that we have that helps aid with the counsel in the court that provides free legal assistance to the public. So we received $12,000 this year, so I'm asking for that to be appropriated. And we had money left over last year that we would like to move over also, since we use more in contractual than we do. It still leaves us about $500, I believe, in the supplies. And I have Judge Stafford. She is taking over, overseeing the family court grant this year. So,
Great.
Judge Stafford.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to be here, and I wanted to just say how wonderful it is to have a League of Women Voters observer here. I first got my start in politics with the League of Women Voters. I think, in fact, the year Councilor Hawk ran was the year I was voter service chair for the League of Women Voters, and she turned in her keys to the candidates' responses to me, so nice to see you again.
Wow.
The Family Court Grant is a small piece of what could eventually be a self-help center for low-income people who need help in civil cases. We have a public defender's office for people who are low income for criminal cases, where we have several attorneys, staff, investigators. We do not have anything similar on the civil side. When we talk about a self-help legal center, as was recommended in the study that the commissioners had done in preparation for the jail, as was recommended by the state courts, Family Law Task Force Commission here in Indiana, and by the Civil Litigation Task Force Commission, including our own local member, Senator Eric Cook, a self-help legal center for people who cannot afford to pay $300 an hour for an attorney is necessary, because people do not know how to file for a divorce to get away from an abusive spouse. People do not know how to file in court and make arguments that will allow them to negotiate with a landlord or to get back their security deposit if it is not returned. I'm not saying the people who file these cases are always in the right, but they deserve to have their case heard and to be heard fairly, and they need to have people available who can give them that legal advice. The family court grant involves limited representation. The public defenders go to court with you. This is just for advice and help with drafting documents for 2 to 3 hours a week. That's all that it's for. So I wanted to put this in that overall context so that when I come back later and make an appeal for a self-help legal center funding, that you know how this would fit into it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I think we probably have some questions. Councilor Hawk?
Right. I just wanted to comment. I hope this isn't tied to an income restriction, simply because we know there are many people, sad to say, that are in relationships that they really could use some legal advice, and they can't let it be seen on any of their records that they've been there for asking for that advice, what to do.
I will say that typically we are restricted in grant funding to people who are at a certain income level or below, although currently counsel in the court does not require proof of that income or documentation. It simply asks people what their income level is and works accordingly. I will say as well that people of any socioeconomic level are absolutely vulnerable to domestic violence. People in same-sex relationships, different sex relationships, et cetera, are all at risk of intimate partner violence. In fact, some estimates are that more than half of all marriages include intimate partner violence, whether it be financial control, manipulation, limitation of contact with family and friends or outside groups, stalking behaviors, monitoring movements, et cetera, let alone the typical black eye that we think of from years ago. However, seeking help at counsel in the court is not necessarily very private, because you have to come into the Justice Building, you wait in a public area of the Justice Building, and you talk to an attorney for 15 minutes to 30 minutes. When I was in private practice before joining the bench, I volunteered at counsel in the court once a month for years. So I'm very familiar with how that works. I've been a volunteer with them from the time the program started until I joined the bench. As a former attorney in private practice, it is much more private to go talk to an attorney where they are going to have discrete entrances, where you're going to be segregated from having to see other people in the waiting room, and et cetera. So I think that's a complicated way of saying this grant is going to be limited to low-income people. Thank you.
Is there currently a space that would accommodate the type of self-help legal center that you're thinking about?
Right now, the answer is it will be a stretch to see if we can squeeze it somewhere. We're in very preliminary discussions with the Board of Judges to talk about where that might work. We have 3 available attorney conference rooms in the Justice Building. We need dozens more, frankly. We need maybe 20. One of them just got turned over into a fingerprinting office a year or 2 ago for the Sheriff's Department, right? These offices, by the way, are about 3 feet this way, and they're triangles, so it's very, very small to try to meet with somebody because the courtrooms are curved. You're in one of the niches left over from a courtroom. The downstairs room is often used up by when bailiffs need to take a break or have a lunch, or if the clerk's office needs to go have a meeting. So that room is often full. So counsel in the court has a very difficult time finding space, and their check-in table is just out in the hallway. So that's where people are standing there in public talking about why they're there and what's going on. We absolutely need to have some more space available for something like this. We will try to make it work as we move towards that, but as we think about plans, not just for a new jail, but if there is a new court campus as well, that would certainly be something I'd ask the council to keep in mind in terms of planning.
And you've mentioned counsel in the court, which sounds like it's a pro bono program for
So, yeah.
local lawyers.
What this grant goes to fund is the organization and staffing by one of the attorneys at what is called the District 10 Pro Bono Program. Every attorney in private practice has what's called an IOLTA account, where interest on money that that lawyer holds for their clients goes to fund that statewide, and then they make grants. So if you pay your attorney $3,000 to be used up during the course of representation, the interest that is earned on that doesn't go to the lawyer or back to you typically. It goes to something called the IOLTA program, which funds these civil legal aid programs throughout the state. And District 10 is part of Pro Bono Indiana now, which is the statewide program that helps to recruit volunteer attorneys to come and help bridge that gap for civil legal aid. Because to be eligible for Indiana Legal Services, back when I worked there in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had to not only meet their extremely limited financial resources to qualify, but they couldn't even take your application for help on a divorce unless there was physical violence and minor children, and there was a 6-month wait list. So we're talking about a huge gap in legal services for what's needed. So I don't know if that answers your question, but okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other?
I just had a quick question. For those who want to check this out, where can they go to figure out if they're qualified?
Certainly. That's a great question. In fact, I met today for an hour with Diane Walker, who is the local executive director of District 10, who helps run this program. As I'm taking over this grant, she and I are meeting to make sure that we have all the reporting requirements on our calendar and that we're talking creatively about how to reinvigorate this program in person. It used to be every Friday for 3 to 5 hours, mostly about family law, but sometimes also about small claims. And it was in person on the 3rd floor of the Justice Building, and it was pretty widely advertised, and it was a walk-in basis. And they might have 2 or 3 volunteer attorneys from the local community coming to help as well as their staff attorney. And you would sign up. Whoever got there first would get seen first. It might take 10 minutes, it might take an hour. A typical day for me when I was volunteering is I might spend half an hour helping someone file for guardianship of a relative whose parents were no longer able to help care. Or I might spend an hour helping someone through filing for a divorce, or I might spend some time helping people dealing with paternity cases and calculation of child support. All these things are extremely complex and difficult for people who are not lawyers to do. So if you are interested in getting services pre-COVID, you would go to the 3rd floor of the Justice Building on Friday. During COVID, they morphed that into a telephone access. And they are now working, Diane Walker and I are working to try to get those services available again in person, although we now have even more limited conference room space. So we're gonna do our best, but we're starting that conversation to bring it back in person now as, I would say COVID is waning, but I'm standing here with a mask on because this is my first day out of quarantine, so.
I will say we do have it on the court's website, so if you go to courts and then you select justice, on the far right on the tab, there's one that says free or reduced legal services.
Yes.
When you click on that, there's probably 15 different ones out there, but one of them listed on there is counsel in the court.
I will also say that my court reporter's emails include a link to all of those different places, that on the bottom of every order I issue is information on how to get to these places, and that District 10 themselves does a fair amount of community outreach to groups like the United Way agency members, Agency Directors Association, through the public library, et cetera. So really trying to make sure the word gets out. I typically meet fairly often with people at Middleway House, with people at Shalom and Beacon, and with other groups around town to make sure that they're aware of these services and what's going on with them.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Deckard.
I appreciate very much, Judge, your explanation, particularly the answers on that last question. Because what I was going to say is, you know, I think for a lot of folks that get to, let's take eviction level, before eviction is happening, life is so overwhelming anyway. They get the order, or they get, you know, I won't say this right, but they get notice that, you know, that they're being evicted.
They get their summons.
Summons, there we go. And then they just check out because, look, this is inevitable, it's gonna happen anyway. I like the idea, and I love the idea of the language being there so that at least that resource is there, the person can reach out, who may be otherwise so intimidated by the system, they just check out.
Well, and this is very related to what we're doing in evictions and housing cases in Monroe County. We started in June of 19, the Eviction Prevention Project with a group of local nonprofits. Very similarly, we have volunteer attorneys and some very low-paid attorneys, less than $30 an hour when the going rate locally is $300 an hour, who are there to provide on-site legal advice in the Zoom meeting for initial hearings for evictions. And then after people have at least had some legal advice, it may be 10 minutes worth, but it's something, we put them into a Zoom mediation with volunteers from the Community Justice and Mediation Center with the landlord and the landlord's attorney, if there is one, and they have a chance to see if they can work out some sort of agreement after they have some information about their legal rights and responsibilities. If they come to an agreement, I can grant it, and only if they don't do I have to set it for a contested bench trial. In a typical day, I might have 20 to 30 eviction cases set. Usually that's once a week, like on Thursdays. 1 or 2 of those will need a contested bench trial because of the work of people coming into the courts to help people understand what's going on and help them make a better plan for themselves that works better for both sides.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Munson.
So I have a question, Judge Stafford.
Yes,
And
Councilor Munson.
That is, have you worked with the township trustees to make sure they have the information to help their clients especially with the eviction issues, know what resources are available?
Sure. I will say for evictions, Tonda Radawan is one of the volunteers for the Eviction Prevention Project, and she works very closely with all the trustee offices and tries to make sure they're aware of it. I wish that there were some sort of regular meeting of the trustees of Monroe County so I could go and talk to them. I'm not aware of one. If I am ignorant of that, please help educate me so that I can go talk to them. I never turned down a chance to come talk to people.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Alrighty. Is there any public comment on this item? Could we have a roll call vote then?
This is on the combined items of 10B and 10C. Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
from the judicial branch to the legislative branch, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Item 11.
Council, I move to approve the Aviation Department's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 8131-0000, Acquire ARF Safety Equipment Grant of $42,977 in the services category.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. You are not Mr. Laverty.
I am not. He's actually, he had a doctor's appointment today, so.
Well,
my name's-
welcome.
Thank you. My name's Ian Pittman. I'm the Assistant Director at the airport.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So we're looking to add a new account line and approve an appropriation for what's called foam, onboard foam tester. This was a grant, 100% federally funded, that we got from the FAA for $42,977. The FAA has been wanting us to switch over to these systems now, and they were willing to give us a grant for it, so we decided to accept the grant.
What's a foam testing unit?
So the ARF truck that we have, the Stryker, it contains firefighting foam. It's proven to be more effective against aircraft fires. So the FAA requires us to get it tested every 6 months. And this system is just, like I said, it's on board. It's more efficient than an external part, which is a little bit more mechanical, a little bit more moving parts. So this just tests the ratio of the foam to water mix. If you get too much foam, it's wasteful. If you get too little, it's not effective.
How long does this piece of equipment last?
I'm not sure. I imagine the life of the system is the life of the truck.
I'll let somebody else ask a question. Does anyone else have questions or comments on this item? Okay. Is there any public comment? All right. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor McKim.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. And we have item B with this.
Council, I move to approve the Aviation Department's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 4801-0000 Construction Fund of $11,984.69 in the services category.
Second.
Could you give us just a little background?
Yeah, so we're just looking to get an appropriation for an upgrade for our tower control system. It's an outdated system, it's just a keypad system. Parts are getting hard to find for it, so we're looking to upgrade to a maglock system, and that way anyone with the RFID tag will have access, and only those people. And we're just looking to appropriate it from our C fund.
Sure. Are there any questions? Yes.
Hello. I read the information provided by Mr. Lafferty to the council, and I still had a question.
Okay.
Will any person be notified if there is some attempt to get through the lock system, or is it just an alarm?
And if I may, Counselor Munson, if we're going to get into the technicalities of the security system, I don't know that we should talk about it at a public meeting.
Okay.
We can get you that information, or we could do an executive session.
That would, I certainly want them to have a better system, so I will support this request tonight, and I would like that information.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions that are allowed to be answered? All right. Any public comment on this item? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
I believe we're at item 12.
Yes, we are.
All right.
Council, I move to approve the Highway Department's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 1135-0000 cumulative bridge of $20,000 in the capital category.
Second.
And we have Ms. Ridge here to tell us about this request.
Good evening. So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's actually a hammer for our excavator. Sometimes we run into concrete or frozen pavement to be able to extract the existing pipe and then to replace it with the new pipe. We did go a little bit and budgeted a little, or asking for the additional to be a little bit more than the estimate, just because we got this estimate, I believe, in the fall, and we didn't know with inflation if that would have to go up a little bit, so.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from council? Go ahead.
I just had a quick one for Ms. Ridge. How do we do it now, or do we just not do it and it doesn't go very well?
And we rent.
Rent. So we're probably saving money this route.
Yeah, we ran into some, I believe it was when it got really, really cold back in December. We were having some problems replacing some pipes on a project that we were trying to get ready for the upcoming paving season. So when you look at the cost of it and such, it'll just make it easier, time saving to have it on hand versus rental.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Hawk?
Not a question, but a comment. I know there's legislation going through at the state level, and I sure would like to see it happen for us in order that we could use more of the funds for storm damage. It seems like we're not getting a lot of support from the people up north. They just want it for snow and ice, but, you know, and that's southern part of the state, we have a lot of problems because of the storms. So I don't know where that legislation is. As of today, I didn't see what was going on with it. I don't know whether that got changed or added on there, but I sure hope that they would do that for us. The other thing is that right now, this is pothole season, and since I have you here, I just wanted to say a big thank you. A neighbor of mine called me and said, please, please report this huge pothole in front of the Craven's house. So I was looking for it online, and I knew there was a place there to fill out a form, and it took me a bit to find it. So I put on Facebook how you could go about finding it. I know it's probably real simple for people who use it all the time, but I couldn't find it. It would be nice if we could get that pothole request right on the front page of the county page for right now, because that's what we're going to see so much in the next few months. And as a reminder, highway cannot get the hot mix right now, and that'll depend on the weather as to when that asphalt plant will open. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of your employees, because they're always so helpful and pleasant and polite and get the job done. And there's sometimes more than anybody can ever think of. If they started right now and didn't stop for the next however many days, they still couldn't get all the potholes.
Thanks, Marty.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote?
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. And we have a second item.
We do. Council, I move to approve the Highway Department's request for additional appropriations in Fund 8171-0000 Bicentennial Pathway Grant of $77,749.18 in the services category, and to simultaneously approve correct 2022 expenditures.
Second.
All right. Did you want to talk to this item? I know it's actually an auditing issue, but
It is.
the auditor
It is.
is
It's
not well.
basically doing some cleanup work in our grant fund. Some of the project was locally funded, and we had paid out of the grant fund. So we're making those corrections in line with the auditor's office for balancing.
Great. And I do believe this is just totally housekeeping at this point. It's approving the correction. Are there questions, though, from council? Or comments on this item? All right, is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor McKim.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we now have item 13 from our health department.
Council, I move to approve the Health Department's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 1159-0000 Health Fund of $15,000 in the services category.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly is online with us. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this request?
Yes, sure. So VaxCare is our third-party billing system that we use to process the insurance reimbursements through our public health clinic with IU Health. And we are requesting this additional appropriation as VaxCare has now started to bill Medicaid. And so it's increasing the amounts of checks that we are getting back. When we receive the checks, we provide 80% of that to IU Health for the public health clinic, and then retain 20%. This is just to set us up so that we have enough money to be able to sustain us, ideally, through the course of the year.
Okay, are there any questions from members of council? No questions. Yes,
Oh,
Councilor
sorry.
McKim.
Sorry, I just want to make sure. So when the reimbursement checks come in, they're also receipted into the health general fund? Is that?
Correct. We retain 20%. We consider this our administration fee, and then send off the other remaining 80% to the public health clinic.
Okay, yeah, but I was just specifically asking what fund they're receipted into, but it is the same fund that, okay, thank you.
Yes.
So right now, you don't have this need pressing. You're asking for an additional appropriation for a future need. Is that correct?
Correct. So we were looking at the money that was expensed in 2022, and the budget was prepared prior to when Medicaid was being billed. So there is an anticipation that we will need this additional funding to be able to process these checks, I guess, for the entire year based off of the $22,000 that was spent in 2022.
So okay, so 10,000 was appropriated for the current year's budget.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how much of that have you gone through?
I do not have that exact figure. We've processed one check. I would have to run that report.
Okay. Is this something you're doing monthly, typically?
Honestly, the checks are a bit random when we receive them. We do not have a concrete set date that we always receive these. It's pretty much just whenever VaxCare it ends up in our mailbox. So sometimes it's a bit unexpected.
Okay, it looks like.
Go ahead. Last year, we ended up having to transfer a lot of our funds from our Bossler line, some money that we had set aside that we had not spent for supplies, into this to be able to continue cutting these checks through the remainder of the year. So we were just trying to avoid a situation like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councilor McKim?
I just want to make sure I understand. So we're not losing money on this. It's just that because we're receiving these checks, we're getting more reimbursement from Medicaid, but we also have to pay essentially to pay the fee to out to the provider as well. And so we're still getting getting more money in, but then that means we need a greater appropriation to be able to pay out. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, that would be correct. And VaxCare does take their fee out. And so we are just strictly processing the money that we're giving to the public health clinic and then the money that we are keeping for the health fund. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
Well, we can always adjust their budget going into next year if it looks like they're about to get rich here. I don't think they're going to be making that kind of money, but we don't want it to be slowed down either. So,
okay.
Normally, I would say just transfer until you really need it.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to say, you know.
Yes, that's what I was thinking in my head, but yeah.
I'll support whatever you say.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right. Well, I think that, yeah.
I mean, they're not, this is the beginning of the year and they've just started, so you
Yeah.
do some of it or whatever. I don't care, it matters not to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think it looks like it's probably going to be needed. We'll just see. Is there, so no more comments from council? Is there any public comment on this item? All right, we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Munson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Great, thanks. So now we have item 13B, and I'd like to just open a discussion on the need for the environmental health specialist general temporary position. And I'll start with hearing from our council administrator, Kim Schell, and Molly Turner King, our legal counsel, just to give us a little background on why I thought we should have this discussion.
I will start off, and just as a reminder, what happened was back in 2021, Penny Cottle, the then health administrator, requested a temporary position because her current EHS general person was going out on active duty. And so in order to keep the process going, she wanted just a temporary position while this person was out. And council granted that and approved it January of 2021. So then during the budget process for 2022, Ms. Cottle came back and said, the person is still deployed. I'd like to go ahead and budget for this position for the 2022 year, because at that time she still didn't know when the employee would return. And so council gave discussion to that and approved the temporary position again for another year. Then what happened was the employee came back January of 2022. Ms. Cottle, when she had requested this, wanted to allow this position to go through 2022 because the employee would have to be retrained, the returning employee, because he hadn't really been employed that long and hadn't gone through all the processes. So she wanted to make sure that there was enough time for like an overlap of training and this kind of thing for the returning employee. And as well, while this person was training, the temporary position could keep, you know, ongoing with the needed work that was done. So then Ms. Cottle left, retired, and so then through the budget process, this was missed. It was not brought up again. It was only supposed to be a temporary position, and it did get funded again without a discussion from council with regards to the need of this position. So I needed to just bring this to your attention as to this was a temporary position only just for a short period of time, so, and not to be a permanent position.
And, okay, is there any, you good?
And I think it's important for this discussion to know that I believe, and Ms. Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, that this temp position was advertised as a temporary position. An individual was hired for the temp position on January 23rd, gave a month's notice, and I believe he or she is supposed to start February 23rd.
Okay. All right. So the person being considered, or I guess who's accepted and is going to start, understands that this is a temporary position. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So I guess what we would want to make clear, and what I wanted to find out from council a little bit more on is, do we want to make it clear that our intent is that after a certain amount of time, say this year or some other amount of time, that this position would no longer be funded? Because it's defined as temporary, and we've been sort of treating it as a permanent position. And I'm not sure that's probably what we've intended. Yes?
I think it appears to me from what I'm hearing and what I've read, it would be, we are just agreeing to put on another full-time position, because that's what this has been. Just keeps, you can say it's temporary for the next 3 years.
Right.
It seems to me it's really rather unfair to hire somebody right now unless we as a council really believe there's a need for this position. It's not just a temporary part-time, because it's hardly fair to the person accepting a position.
Right.
And do we really believe that this position is needed above all other new positions that might be needed throughout county government? That's what we have to look at. That's when we looked at the one for the jail. It's rare that somebody comes and says, we want a brand new position. Generally, it's one that you already have and you're wanting to change the job requirements or something of the sort. But a brand new position without additional dollars to cover it, not a grant or anything, I think we have to look long and hard at this. Or we'd have all department heads doing some temporary for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Does that sound harsh? I'm being harsh today. I don't mean
No,
to.
I think it's the nature of my concern. So thank you for articulating it. Councilor McKim.
I guess I find it hard to kind of consider this item in isolation from all the other kind of changes that are either have been going on or are proposed for the department. I mean, it looked like we had on the PAC agenda a whole slew of position modifications to position descriptions, and they were pulled, I assume temporarily. It seems like, is that correct? Just temporarily pulled?
Correct.
Yeah, it just seems like considering this one request in isolation from all the other needs and changes going on in the department just doesn't make sense. And I feel like we sort of need to look at the whole list of proposed changes, see what the org chart was, see what the new org chart is, and then be able to make a decision. So I guess I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on this particular item until I see what everything else is being proposed.
And if I may, Mr. McKim just reminded me, this particular position was included in a job, in a submission to PAC. So there was a request to change this position's job duties. And that request was temporarily pulled because the health department's board was going to review it. And I don't know if the health board has reviewed those changes yet, and if they will be asking to change the job duties of this particular position.
Madam President,
Yes.
I did watch the health board meeting, and I didn't hear them mention any of this. So was that discussed, and maybe when I got up to leave the room for a few minutes or something, did I miss it?
No, we are scheduling, we are in the works of scheduling a separate session to where we will discuss these all at one time, separate from the quarterly meeting that we just had.
Well, I don't like that.
Okay. Comment? Question?
I think I will leave the configuration of the position and the request to the health department and to PAC. But I certainly want to remove the title of temporary. And it was designed as a to help with transition, and I doubt that is the purpose of the job at this point.
Well,
because it's a brand-new person who is not going to be helping the person who came back with transition, if it's a new position.
although I guess I am a little bit concerned that this position was created as a stopgap for a situation.
Exactly.
That situation no longer exists, so we just are gonna grandfather in this position?
No, I'm having the same question that you do.
Okay.
The position was created to provide a transition for a returning employee. That returning employee did come back, has been there a while, and now that the temporary position is vacant and being advertised to a new person.
Oh, and if I may clarify, Counselor Munson, the position is not vacant because it was already advertised. A person accepted the job on January 23rd and is set to start in the temporary position on February 23rd. So next week.
Well, if we didn't approve it, how,
So,
it's just not setting real well. Yeah.
okay, it's definitely confusing.
It is a little bit. I would think it wouldn't be automatic that a temporary position would be refilled.
Yeah.
But
Right.
that's not, I mean, I guess also I can understand that that's bygones in some respect because
Almost positive.
it's happened.
Yeah.
So the question, I think, is do we do something now about it? Do we remind ourselves to do something this next coming budget year? Or do we, as Councilor McKim is saying,
wait to see?
Anticipate a whole bunch of changes, which I didn't realize we were
didn't
even
either.
considering.
Yeah.
So, because it hasn't made it here yet, not for, not blaming anybody, I just hadn't heard that yet.
If I may.
Yeah.
The changes that we were proposing were more just to try to standardize some of the positions that we have in that section. Because when we've got to looking at them, for example, some of the senior positions, the descriptions were quite varied. And so we were trying to just create a type of standardization across the health department for those lead positions that rest under the manager so that there are more clearly defined roles and responsibilities within each of those job descriptions. For this temporary position, there's not really, the need is in wastewater. So the job description change for that was to create more of a universal position, which is in our strategic plan, so that this position could focus on the high demand in wastewater, but then also be able to transition, for example, with the seasons, with the foods department, with the markets, to be able to help fill in some of the gaps and the increased demands in that area as well, and also be able to help on the administrative side within the environmental division. So not necessarily defined to this general description, but more of a universal to help cover the needs in the department where they currently exist.
And you are also asking for it to be permanent?
Yes.
I see. And how does that, this isn't a question for you, Ms. Kelly, this is probably more for our office, but I'm just thinking in terms of the WIS guidance that we have on jobs, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, redoing job descriptions was really a big deal, and we need to try not to do that, but if there's maybe a departmental organization, that's the time that there would be an exception. So what, does this fit with that?
Yes, and what some of the guidance is if the position becomes vacant, that would be a good time to do it because you would want to update it before the new person came in. And/or if there is a change in administration, they can update job descriptions at that time.
And that makes
And so this is, since the request, it seems like, is going to be a totally different, not the standard EHS, general, and they're wanting to change it to more of a universal all kind of thing, that will require a WIS process.
Yeah. Okay. Councilor Deckard.
If, pardon me, Frog. If I am hearing this correctly, to sum this up, we've got three conflicting kind of areas. We have the original position that was designated by council with Ms. Cottle for a temporary fix while we had a member, county employee performing service overseas. Second, we have a position that has been marked in our budget. We did not remove it last session. And then third, we've got the conflict of WIS and our process for this changing under what Ms. Kelly's now saying with the more universal process. I guess the question I would have is, given the person outstanding who's accepted the position, I guess the question, and this might be a Molly Turner King, and maybe it's not tonight kind of question, what is the legal course back to the good highway?
So I did look at some case law on employment law, and most of the case law indicates that if a position was offered and accepted and a person detrimentally relied on that they accepted and detrimentally took actions, promissory estoppel could play. And so I think there would be legal ramifications if we just eliminated the position at this point because the person has provided notice, quit their new job. I don't know how changing the position plays into that case law because this person was interviewed based on the current job description, accepted based on the current job description, and there's going to be a forthcoming proposal to completely change that job description, or at least add stuff into it that I don't know if this applicant's aware of, if he's qualified, things like that. So I'd have to look at the case law to see about changing it. But I think there would be legal ramifications if we just eliminated it at this point.
Question?
Yes.
The job that was offered, was it written in there that it was a temporary position, and was it signed off by the prospective employee that she understood it was a temporary position? If that's the case, we're talking about a whole different thing. Temporary as in a week, 3 days, 2 days, whatever. I think I'm not a lawyer, but I'm telling you what, if you accept a job that you say you know it's going to be temporary,
yeah,
stay for 2 weeks, that's temporary.
It was advertised as a temp position, and Ms. Kim, Michelle went back through the email, and I believe council received an email on December 16th, 2022, asking to fill the temp position. It was in an email with several other requests, and so that's how we got to this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just looked it up, and there were several internal transfers going on, and in that there was a request to fill 3 positions, and the temporary position was one of the 3. So that's how I believe it got missed. Because we shouldn't have advertised for it because it was temporary.
Mm-hmm. Councilor McKim.
So just to make sure I understand here, we have a position that was duly approved by the county council. It was funded in the budget for both 2022 and 2023. We had a department head who went through the process to refill it, and it was advertised with the appropriate title, which included temporary in it, and somebody had accepted it. So I guess I'm not seeing where, I mean, you know, maybe we wish we had done something different, but I guess I'm not, I'm not seeing what went wrong here.
Well, I think what went wrong was that it's a temporary position, and by that nature.
We just didn't say how temporary, but we funded it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was the will of council, if you look back at when our decisions were made about this position. I don't think we intended it to just be temporary, long-term. So, and I don't think that this is anything on Ms. Kelly. I mean, I honestly think that we missed something in the process, and so I just want to clarify our intentions, and I certainly don't want to eliminate the position next week. That's not at all what I was thinking. I'm more thinking that we talk about this position in terms of maybe we stop funding it at the end of this year, and Ms. Kelly goes through the process of asking for a permanent position for this universal person that can do everything. I don't think that's how she described it, but that's what I heard.
A utility infielder.
Yes.
Right. And I want to say that we have done that before, where a job description was created. It wasn't funded that same year because it wasn't budgeted for. So, I mean, she can either, you know, go through because we did that with a couple positions for the health department where she wanted the positions, we didn't have job descriptions, and we didn't get them funded until the job descriptions were in place and council approved that, yes, these positions were needed. So she's more than welcome to submit this job request, you know, for this job description and go through the PAC process as well as the council process to see if this position is needed. But what we've always done in the past is unless it's an emergency need, it won't be budgeted until the following year.
So the person stays in this type of position for a year. A new
Correct.
position
That-
may be created.
And
they
Marty,
could move into
yeah,
that.
and Marty can comment to that, but I think that's,
Right. I was just going to give a friendly suggestion here to the department head, that if there is any opening that should come up, any vacancy come up that is a permanent position, and that this person might be qualified for, to do that and not refill this slot at this point until we have more time to think on through this. I mean, it seems like we've had a lot of vacancies there, so maybe there's another one on the way, I don't know.
Ms. Kelly, you had your hand up.
Yes, so I was just wanting to clarify about, try to further clarify about the job description. And I think it was more just to ensure that the person in this position is fulfilling the duties as described in the job description, as we do not currently have a huge demand in our general environmental section where we need an additional staff member. However, we have a very high demand in wastewater, and our food section is very busy as well. So just, and that was verbally made clear to the applicant of primarily assisting with the wastewater demand, but then also be able to help out in foods. So it was more in an attempt to just ensure that that was on paper clearly defined.
See.
yes, but the current job description doesn't have those position additions in that. So we have to go with what we've got.
Yep. Councilor McKim?
I feel like we already have a process for creating full-time positions. And this will just have to compete with all other requests for a full-time position. We'll just have to consider it like it's a request for a new position.
Okay. I kind of agree with you. I think that, there's no action to be taken right now. But changing the temporary job description is a little complicated and probably not the path that you want to go. You probably want to look at creating a new position with the knowledge in the back of your head that it's not likely, at least in my mind, my personal opinion, it's not likely that council will be interested in continuing a temporary position into the future budget years.
Totally agree with that.
There is a comment from our former health administrator. For background, making this position permanent was discussed in early 2022 with some council members and approved by the Board of Health when they prepared for the 23 budget. Not sure about it being missed after that or why it was not discussed at budget hearings. Yeah, I think that might have just been me missing it. I don't know. Jeff, do you have your hand up for another?
No, sorry, no.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you for that, Ms. Cottle. I appreciate the information. I do think, though, that, does anyone else have anything else to say with respect to I sort of just laid out my opinion of the way I think things should go. Councilor McKim sort of did too. Does anyone else disagree or think that that's not the best advice? So I would encourage the health department to work with our office in getting things to PAC and through the whole official PAC process. And we'd be happy to, I'm volunteering Kim. She would be happy to help you with getting things aligned so that we're not stepping away from the process that we've worked really hard to get in place for creating new positions and updating the descriptions. And if that's, anyone else have anything else? Okay, we should move on. Thank you for your patience, Ms. Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we are going to now talk about number 14.
Council, I move to approve the sheriff's salary contract for the period of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2026.
Second.
And we have Ms. King here, who looks surprised that we are now asking her to talk to us.
It's okay. The sheriff's contract, salary contract was initially discussed at the January 24th meeting. And during that meeting and discussion, it was decided to add language to section 1 of the contract to clarify that the sheriff shall be paid a fixed amount equaling that of the state set salary for the prosecutor. And I'm gonna try to share my screen, but in the version that is going to be before you for consideration, there's additional clarifying language in that fixed compensation clause to just further clarify that the intent is to match the state salary and only the state salary. I'm working on it. I don't know how to make it bigger. It's really big on my screen. That's too big now. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust the size. And okay, so I don't know how well you can see this. It's the language in red. So at the last meeting, we added in that first sentence, the pay by the state of Indiana. So it says the sheriff shall be paid a fixed amount equaling of the salary paid by the state of Indiana to the full-time elected prosecutor. In the second sentence, I added also by the state of Indiana to reflect that if the prosecutor's salary is adjusted by the state, we will match that state salary. So if the county provides an adjustment to the prosecutor, it is not under this contract guaranteed to the sheriff. And then that last sentence just, I think, sets that out as clear as one can be. Just
Making it very clear. Are there any questions or comments from council on these edits? Okay, any public comment on the sheriff salary contract? Could I have a roll call vote on this, please?
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Hawk?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
We are now on to number 15.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2023-5, extending the Sophia Travis Grant Agreement period for Wheeler's Missions 2021 Grant Award.
Second.
Counselor Munson, would you like to tell us what we're doing here?
Yes, this is a request by Wheeler Mission to extend their 2021 grant award so that the funding can be used in the calendar year 2023 because they had challenges in carrying out their plan to improve diversion services, and this was due to labor challenges. I think we can remember COVID and labor challenges.
Indeed.
And so they have not expended any of it. So they requested the Sophia Travis Grants Committee to review this. The committee met and recommends to the Grants Committee and to the council and to the commissioners to support this change.
Okay. Are there any questions from council on this item?
Pretty straightforward.
It is. Is there any public comment?
Oh, I guess I have a clarifying comment. Ms. Munson, or Counselor Munson summarized it. The Sophia Travis Grant Committee met on February 1st, and there is going to be a signed recommendation to extend this. It's just that we're waiting for some signatures, so I hope to include this, the signed recommendation as part of the commissioner packet. If it isn't signed by tomorrow, I will tell them the same thing, that the committee met on the 1st, they voted, and it was passed unanimously. We're just waiting on the signatures.
Okay, that sounds good. Just as a reminder for everyone, the Sophia Travis grants are awarded and there is a reporting requirement, which is part of how this probably came to light.
Yes. The grant awards in, let's call it fall 2021, I don't know whether it was October or November specifically, provides funding from the period of award through the calendar year until December 31st. So there is, upon completion of a grant, a reporting requirement to be followed. Whether it is after December 31st or it can be before. Some grants are very short-term, actually. And Wheeler Mission actually made the request to us because they knew they had this grant award, and they are now able to develop their project and hope to carry out the construction plan soon.
And this was for construction?
It involved construction at Wheeler Mission.
Okay.
The MOU indicates that the purpose is for, I just added, intervention services, shelter. So I do believe it was for construction.
Yes.
All right. All right. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote?
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
And now we have item from our council office.
Does this all have to be read off?
Council, I move to approve the request to de-appropriate the retention bonus supplemental account lines plus any subsequent FICA amounts for a total de-appropriation of $1,282,649.75, the details of which are set out on the agenda.
Second.
Kim, could you explain this to us?
So during the budget process for 2023, council opted to give each eligible employee a retention bonus supplemental. So we added to the departments with employees, full-time and part-time, eligible part-time, a retention bonus line. And that amount, came to, which you stated, so the amount came to $1,191,500, okay? And then there's FICA on top of that. So that was all going to come out of each budget line and this kind of thing. So council then met with the Board of Commissioners and was able to get that added as a employee bonus to the ARPA projects list. And so in order to not have any confusion with regards to where the retention bonus is being paid from, as well as to ensure that this money isn't transferred out into other lines, I'm asking to de-appropriate the outlined retention bonus amount and the FICA amounts that correspond with that from each of the budget lines.
Very clear. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Yes, Ms. Hawk.
Yes. So you will send this on to DLGF then when this is done? Because I know they use the same method of taking appropriations away as they do of adding them on to. So,
yes, I confirmed with DLGF the process of de-appropriating, and since it was such a large amount, and they said, yes, we have to advertise that they're the de-appropriation. So we did that, and then once, you guys approve that, then we have to report it into the Gateway portal, so.
okay. It's great. Good. There was Gateway training last week, which I missed because I was in Indianapolis at the AIC conference. But I think that's something most of us could use. And then there's more training, is that tomorrow as well?
For LAO.
On the budgetary process, so I just love being trained.
Lots and lots of opportunities for professional development. Any other comments or questions on this item? All right, then public comment on the de-appropriation. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. So now we move on to item B from our own office.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2023-2, which establishes a policy to recognize knowledge, skills, and abilities for non-Monroe County government applicants and current permanent part-time employees applying for full-time employment.
Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you. So we've seen this before, and I think we just wanted to see if there was feedback from departments on the proposed policy. Do we have feedback?
Yes.
I have a question before it's...
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I would like someone to read off the beginning of the whereas on the salary ordinance. I would, just as a reminder, because as you all know, I don't support this. I support in adjusting when it's right to do, but I never think it should be handled by an employee because it is our job. That's the way it works. The county council is responsible for the number of positions, and we set the salaries. We don't say, we don't want to be bothered figuring it out, we're just going to let employees do it. And that's...
I'm totally fine with reiterating the whereas to make that point. My understanding, if I know what you're referencing, my understanding though is we've set the salary. They're reviewing because there might be.
I'm reading what you're saying. We set the salaries and let's say it.
We set the salary, and it's being reviewed because a request has been made to vary from the base salary in some way. Therefore, this is the part I think you disagree with. It's employees or staff who are doing that review. And then if they do recommend a change, that's when we would come and discuss it at council.
If they recommend a change?
If they
right.
support.
In other words, the employee could
Correct.
not change the salary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No.
Not allowed.
And I also would like to make sure that any that is requested, that every council member is notified that's been requested. So that no department head, and this is nothing about who's holding these positions now.
Right. No,
We're
I get
talking
it.
about 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
I think I'm agreeing with everything you're saying.
We would want to know, every department head out there would want to know that we knew, that we, the elected people, to make these decisions, that we know that it's being requested. So no one can say no to them either. You see?
Exactly. Right.
But
without
we
us
would only
knowing
be
it.
able.
Yes or no should be coming from us.
And it does.
Exactly.
Yes, even with this policy. And that's the intent.
I can read it if you want.
Read a whereas. Which whereas was it, number 2?
Right.
I can do both.
I just wanted to make sure that we are aware of what that thing says.
Let me do both. I'm going to read both whereases into the record from Resolution 2023-2, a resolution establishing a policy to recognize knowledge, skills, and abilities for non-Monroe County government applicants and for current permanent part-time.
I'm sorry. I think Councilor Hawk is requesting the whereases from the salary ordinance. Is that correct, Councilor Hawk?
I'm from I believe I don't have it memorized, but I believe on the salary ordinance, it says, and whereas, the county council duly, the people who set the number of employees.
So not
and
germane
set
to the
salaries.
resolution before us, but something
on the
else just to
first
read
page.
out? We could do that, I guess.
I should have had that ready, but I thought I could sort of memorize it.
I'm pulling up the salary ordinance. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at what you wanted me to look at. So I'll read both whereas clauses from the salary ordinance. Whereas the Indiana legislature adopted Indiana Code Section 3623, which established the Monroe County Council as the governing fiscal body of Monroe County, and whereas Indiana Code Section 36253 grants the Monroe County Council the power to 1, fix the number of officers, deputies, and other employees, 2, describe and classify positions and services. 3, adopt schedules of compensation. And 4, hire or contract with persons to assist in the development of schedules of compensation.
So that's where my concern is. Just 30 years of reading that thing, I think it means something, so.
I agree it means something, and I think this resolution supports it and enables us to not have to wear ourselves out in the process. Are there other questions or comments, or I guess you were looking for providing us if there was any feedback from departments?
Well, as I pull this up, I can summarize what I'm looking at. There was feedback from 4 departments: the planning department, the commissioner's office, the prosecutor's office, and the probation department.
And has the most importantly, has the feedback been incorporated or changed this draft in any way?
Well, I think Ms. Kim and I have talked about it, and we have some thoughts on the feedback. So we haven't changed anything yet, but we were going to discuss the feedback. So the planning department said that they were in support of the updated changes, and that was their thought. The commissioner's office first suggested a scoring sheet showing the information provided equals the decision made. I think Michelle's concern as the counselor administrator who is looking at these things or these requests is it might be difficult to create a scoring sheet since each of these requests are pretty fact specific. You're looking at what each job description requires, and then what knowledge, skills, and ability the applicants are bringing in. So I don't know how we would create a score sheet that is general enough to look at all of the job descriptions. And in the request, the elected official or department head is required to list the applicable knowledge, skills, and ability. Sure.
What I want to show you is this is the request form that would accompany the updated policy. And the section 2, it's the knowledge skills, and this is the part that the department head would complete. And they would list the job duties from the job description, the current title, and then the comparable duties from the prior employment. And then they would summarize how many years that would be. That is the department's responsibility to fill this out. Once that part is filled out, then it gets forwarded to the personnel administrator as well as myself, and then we verify that information against the job description and the resume that is forwarded to us. So it's going to have 3 sets of eyes on this to ensure that the request is meeting the requirements. And so they have, if it's for a full-time position of a non-Monroe County employee, they have to have at least 3 years of comparable duties. So, if they only have 1 year, that's what we have to go by, so.
What if they have 3 years for job description duty X, Y, and Z, but only 1 year for job description duty A?
Well, that's where the personnel administrator and myself, we can, confer with each other, and we can either agree or disagree on what level we believe, and then we forward our decision on to you guys. If we agree on a level, then we forward that on to the council saying, this is what we've decided. You've got 48 hours. Tell us what you think. If we don't agree, it goes to the entire council for a complete review by you. So it's kind of like the same process if somebody submits a vacancy request. We're giving you, 48 hours to review what we've done. And if you can...
But at that point, we've already known that it was requested. And you're sending us an agreed upon recommended solution.
Correct.
And if the agreed upon recommended solution is yes, it does not come to us?
No, it still comes
Okay.
to you.
That's what I thought.
Regardless. You'll get the saying, this is our decision, this is what we came up with.
But it doesn't come before council?
No, it doesn't come before council, it's emailed to you. But if you don't like that decision, you have 48 hours from that receipt of that email to say, nope, we want it to come before the entire council.
I think if it's yes, I would want it to come before council, even if it was agreed upon. Or am I just muddying waters again?
Well, I thought the process, and I don't know, but I thought the process was so that it didn't have to come to council, so that they could hire the person sooner.
I'm messing things up for you.
That's okay. That's why I want to, make sure we're all on the same page.
Thoughts? How many emails do you get a day?
I don't even know.
I mean, more than 100?
Yeah.
I think it's real easy to,
Yes.
you go back and you look at the emails and you're trying to scroll down and make sure you've answered everybody. And, it's midnight and you don't see them all.
Councilor Munson?
I would like to clarify a point. We will be notified when you receive the information and that you're going to carry out the review. So we get this on our radar that something may be coming to us down the road. And we are hereby forewarned that we'll have a 48-hour clock waiting on our response.
That's the idea is, once we receive the initial request, I will let you know that this department is requesting this position at a, whatever, level. And then that way you will know there's something coming.
Okay. And another question, please. If staff recommends that this is not consistent with what's expected, we are notified of that as well.
Yes, you are. You're notified.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. If it's approved, if it's denied, if we don't agree.
Okay, if you don't agree. And to bring it to the council, all we would have to say is that we would like it to come to the council.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes.
So we get this email, and then I call you, and then maybe I call somebody else, or then you call somebody else, and isn't that sort of the term of serial meeting?
I don't want any calling. I think if you get this email and you want to see this come before council, call Kim Shell.
What if we just wanted to have a discussion? Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, with such and such, and this, what's going on in that department, and did you know such and such?
Sounds like a public conversation.
And that's generally the kind of thing you want to say in a public meeting. Any rate, I think it's Valentine's night and everybody ought to go home, so just make a decision, folks.
Counselor McKim?
So first of all, I am in favor of this delegated review process that I'll call it. That I feel like we've been talking about for a couple of months, but the problem is we're spending so much time arguing this one point that it's going to negate any savings that we're going to have on our agenda by not just considering each of these requests at the council level. So I am perfectly also happy to get rid of that particular aspect of it, the delegated aspect of it, and just if that will help it move forward with more quickly without a lot more discussion or arguing. I just feel like if the point is to make things simpler for ourselves, it doesn't sound like we're accomplishing that goal. So, I mean, it sounds like President Wiltz that you would like to see the council review each of these requests.
No, not necessarily. I just am afraid I mean, we missed a whole position getting funded last budget year, you know? I mean, doesn't bode well for our attention to detail. But I would be totally in favor. Let's give this a try. Let's have it happen. But can we put this on our agenda for next February and just see how the year went with it? Like, I just want to, I don't want to like just say, hey, this is the new process and never check back in to see if it's going all right.
We have at the very end of this policy that it will be reviewed annually by PAC to find out if this is working, if it's not working, what kind of changes you would like. So the process is to annually in March have PAC review this. So we already have it in the policy to be reviewed.
Sounds great. Go ahead.
I like the review that will come about as a result of this and for PAC, and I think PAC does this on a daily, or has these considerations on a daily basis. The one thing that I always think about, and I know this is maybe a contrary thought to other counselors' philosophies, but I do think that we have other elected officials and departments that have to move with great speed and dispatch at trying to secure people in a very difficult, competitive labor environment where you're also attracting people to public service. And public service hasn't exactly always attracted people consistently, good times or bad. And people know it generally in their departments what they need and what they don't need. Ultimately, we have a budget and a review and a process of all of that. I do think that sometimes when we get into particular minutia of these details, we also run the risk of losing sight of other pressing issues of which funding and council has overwhelming jurisdiction. So I would just say that we can figure out in a year where we're at. We'll have something we change because that's what we do, or PAC does, and kind of come back to it at that point.
Is there a way to make this bigger?
So, I think the suggestions on number 3 and number 4 are perfectly appropriate, and
it's really good to see.
is that something that would require changes, and you would bring this back to us?
I think Molly and I discussed and talked about, so like number 3 wants to have an appeal process. So when let's just say something gets denied, it will be forwarded to the entire council along with the department head. I feel like that the department head could reach out to the liaison and make the request for a review of the entire council. But because we have, because we have the process in place where they're going to be notified, and we want the departments to reach out to their liaisons, then the liaison could contact me and say, hey, put this on the agenda.
Or as an alternative, the policy can just say that anytime there's a denial, it automatically goes to the full council. Whether there's a consensus on the denial or the personnel administrator or the council doesn't agree, if it's denied, it can come to council.
Isn't that just back to where we are, where we were?
I mean, that could bring us back to where we are. I mean, one thing that does is it preserves what county seems to do extremely well, and that is to have a very difficult tension between different departments and elected officials. No one should be exempt from that. That's realistic. The state set this up for a reason that way. And you can look in the last month and you'll have plenty of answers on that. But I think that, I don't know, I think that keeps, there's an aspect of that kind of keeps a quick staff review of that action.
The other concern was, with the probation department was a delay in hiring. The only delay is, there's not a delay in the hiring. They can hire this person at the base rate. The delay is whether they get the KSA status, because that they can't commit as a department head to that status. So that has to, until the,
But that's exactly what she's saying.
Right.
Right, but it's in
The
there.
policy. It's, Part B, subsection 5 says that you may not proceed with hiring the applicant at the KSA status. So you can, and then later on page 5, section 3, subsection C, it says, until a final decision is made, until a final decision has been made by the council administrator or the council with regards to the KSA request, any conveyance to the employer applicant by the elected official or department head is non-binding on council. So it prevents them promising a KSA in advance.
So it doesn't, so it's not delaying the hiring at all. It's delaying the status.
Right.
Okay.
So,
So we're good on that one.
good on that.
You kind of have a scoring sheet just in the way that's submitted. We defeat the purpose if we have an appeal, but we'll allow the liaison to bring it, because anybody can bring it, but the liaison could be contacted, and that addresses the other one. And Bob's your uncle. All right.
Yeah, and we have a process to review it in March. So there's a process for a review.
Okay.
Trent's wearing off on me.
I'm sorry.
Is there any public comment? Oh, wait, are there any other comments from council?
That's good.
Okay, is there any public comment? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Yep. We can.
It was proposed as a vote. We will
A
vote.
discussion and a vote.
Let's vote.
Okay. Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk.
No.
She say no? No, thank you. Counselor Wiltz.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-1.
All right, now we have summary minutes.
Council, I move to approve the summary minutes of January 10th, 2023 regular session, January 24th, 2023 work session, and council executive session as presented.
Second.
Second.
Any questions? Public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
I wasn't at all of those.
you're just approving
Minutes.
that,
I approve that whoever wants to sign it, sign it.
okay. Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Munson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
It's now time for council comments. Are there any counselors who would like to make comment? Counselor Crossley, and then Counselor Hahn.
I promise I'll make it brief. So, happy Valentine's Day. We could be anywhere in the world, but we are here. So yay, there you go. I heart everybody. So, a lot of the things that we do on the Criminal Justice Response Committee, it has a lot to, well, we should be thinking a lot about a lot of things. Mental health, the way that, folks that go into incarceration with substance use, all of those different things. And I know the governor has made a pitch to us in terms of making mental health a priority, and legislators also are doing the same as well. And my commitment to this committee is to see how we can do better here in Monroe County. And one of the things that I did to give myself homework is to meet other people and talk to other people. And that actually started with talking to our state representative, Dave Hall, about Senate Bill 1, about how we can build a better mental health care system for Indiana. Him and I had a very robust conversation, even though we might be on different sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter, because I think that we have, the best interest is trying to make sure that we have funding for these particular things. So I appreciate it, Representative Hall, reaching out and having conversations, even and talking in terms of what we can do to divert incarceration in terms of even doing a work release program. So these are things that I'm just trying to think outside the box and think of how we can do things here in Monroe County instead of just building a jail, instead of really trying to tackle the systemic problem that we have across the country, but here in our county as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's also Happy Black History Month, so that's really important. Wish we had more things to do here in the county, but we can also support our city colleagues as well with a lot of things that they are doing as well, because Black history is American history, period. Lastly, I have this bottle, Demand a Seat. I've been part of Moms Demand Action against gun violence for a while. Again, some of y'all know my history with, it'll be 19 years that my brother was shot and killed, and there's not a day that doesn't go by. 5 years today is Parkland, and then yesterday, Michigan State. We should all, even though we know that we can say that it hasn't hit here, we don't have to think about it. I dare to say I think we need to start thinking about things as well. So I just wanted to say that's definitely been on my heart and my mind, living here in a college town. And hopefully we can do better and be better in our society.
Counselor Hawk.
First of all, I want to share my condolences. Lost your family. Not many know that my grandmother was shot and murdered before I was born. It was right here in Monroe County. And I would never mention if my mother was still living, because she just couldn't bear the thought of it. So I just, I didn't ever get to know my grandmother. And when people say, oh, I was at grandma's house, and I'm thinking, how lucky you are. I never had a grandmother. So, my father's mother, my father died when I was 5, so I didn't get to know her. At any rate, all of that being said, I just wanted you to know why I was watching this. I bet you think I'm playing games on this, but I'm not, because we're getting messages about what's going on at the state. So what I wanted to share with you is something from Ryan Hoff. Ryan Hoff is with the AIC. So I got this from Rick Ring, because and the Indiana County Council Legislative Group. So just a heads up. And this has to do with the TIF, residential TIFs, because what they're trying to do is to pass it without any guardrail, without coming back to the county for permission. So I'm just going to read this little paragraph to you so you'll know. It said, House Bill 1081 can be found here. You can look at it. Note that the bill was amended in House Local Government Committee today, and it may take a while for the linked version to reflect the amendments. The text of the amendments can be found in the toolbar to the left, and the amendment to House Bill 1081 removed the guardrails. So the bill mirrors Senate Bill 300, and House Bill 1081 has been sent to Ways and Means. So we may have an opportunity to amend and put the guardrail back in, giving the counties the approval of the use of a residential TIF. Why is this important? Well, that's because the money for a residential TIF will be stayed right there in that TIF. And the concern is, and they can continue to say the cities, but I think we have a concern here in the county as well, that pretty soon everything would be a residential TIF, and then of course the revenue coming in for the schools, the library, and county government and so forth. So there has to be some kind of a way that there's a guardrail that, in my opinion, the county should have an opportunity to review. I'm sure not everybody will agree with me on that one either, but that's, just wanted to share that with you. So that's something for us to be watching is House Bill 1081.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from council? No? Well, I just had one comment that I wanted to make, which is a congratulations to Councilor Crossley, because she is our Woman of the Year for Bloomington, and well-deserved, absolutely well-deserved, and very proud to be your colleague.
Thank you.
And with that, we shall adjourn.
Thank you.